We're here today to talk about garden design, and most of us have landscapes or gardens that we'd like to change or make modifications to, or start from scratch. Often what we'll do is go to the store, buy plants, bring them home and hope for the best. And often that results in having to replace them or having a result that you're really not expecting. With a little bit of planning and forethought, however, you can have a garden that's going to last for a long time that you and your family can enjoy, and that'll be an asset and an enhancement to your landscape rather than something that you have to worry about and spend money on. Before you get started on your landscape design, there's a few simple steps you want to keep in mind that'll help you get started. First of all, you want to do a very simple plot plan. This will just be a basic measurement of the area that you're going to be landscaping. Second, you want to do a thorough but quick site analysis of your area. Third, you want to assess the user needs, and this is where you just take into account how the site's going to be used and who's going to be using it. Fourth, you want to figure out your activity areas, what the users are going to be using and where. And fifth, the best part, plant placement. And this is usually everybody's favorite part, but you can't skip ahead because putting a little bit of thought in beforehand will really make it worthwhile at the end. A plot plan is where you're going to start with your landscape plans. And this is basically going to be a base map of the area you want to landscape. If you have a plat or a survey of your property in your house, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort. But if you don't worry. You can take some basic measurements yourself. What you want to do is get a measuring wheel or a long measuring tape. And the most important things to take into consideration are the dimensions of your property line and the orientation of the house on the property. In addition, what you want to do is make note of any existing hardscapes like sidewalks, driveways, decks, pool areas, utility boxes, things like that. Also, don't forget to look up. If you have a power line or low overhanging trees, you want to make sure you take those into consideration as well, because that's going to affect your landscaping. Once you have your plot plan and your base map, make a copy of it, and then you're going to conduct your site analysis. And this is just a fancy term for an inventory of what's in your landscape. There's a few things you need to make sure you pay attention to make sure that your plants do as well as they possibly can in the future. One of the most important things is sun versus shade. And seasoned gardeners are going to know exactly where the sun and shade are in their landscapes from 1 hour to the next. But novices or people who aren't as familiar with their landscapes may not. So on a day off, just take note every couple of hours of where the sun patterns flow, where the shade goes in your yard. Make note of existing plants that you want to make sure you keep and plants that you definitely want to go. That way you know where you're going to have room to work with. Also, you want to pay attention to your soil, and this is another very important part. Is your soil wet or dry? Are there different spots in your yard that tend to be drier or more wet than others? And also, is your soil sandy or is it a clay-based soil? All these factors are going to affect what types of plants you select eventually for your landscape. Sometimes it also helps to look around at your neighbors' landscapes. What do they have and don't have? What would you like to see more of in your landscape or your neighborhood? And what works for them and what doesn't? You can learn a lot by looking around and seeing what plants do well, what plants don't do so well, how often your neighbors are out there pruning and maintaining. This will give you a good idea in the long run of what you're going to end up doing with those plants in your own landscape. Now that you have your plot plan and your site analysis, it's time to consider the human element and do a simple survey of user needs. All this means is you're going to sit down with the users of the landscape and talk to them about how they're going to use the area. Do they spend a lot of time outside or inside? If they are spending time inside, do they enjoy looking out of specific windows to see things? Do they do a lot of entertaining? And when they do entertain, are they having large groups outside, or is it small, intimate family dinners maybe on a patio? In addition to that, think about how they use the area for recreational activities. Do they enjoy lawn games like volleyball or badminton? Or do they prefer things like using a pool or just taking walks or sitting outside enjoying nature? Once you've thought about activities and entertaining, also consider practical elements like storage and parking. Do they have vehicles or boats that need to be parked and screened from the view of everyday activities? Is there a storage shed or a wood pile that might need to be screened or have easy access? So consider all these elements, both human and a little bit more hardscape oriented, when you're doing your user needs survey. All right, now you've got your plot plan, your site analysis, and your user needs. And you're going to use all three of these to figure out where your activity areas are going to be. And by activity, I don't mean romper room or twister. I mean the areas that are going to be elements of your landscape. So your relaxation areas, your game area, your storage area, etc. And when you do this, try to be as logical as possible with it. And what I mean by that is, if you have an area that's going to be for dining or cooking out, you want to put that near the home so that people coming in and out don't have very far to walk before they get to the table. In addition to that, you want to put noisy areas away from quiet relaxation areas. So say there's a basketball goal. You don't want to put that right next to where Dad's going to be reading the paper on Sunday morning. And if there's a children's play area, you want to make sure that it's within view of where adults can supervise easily through a window or through their seating area. So Just go through systematically, you'll get it all together, and try to be logical about it when you put it all together on one paper. Hopefully by now you have the steps you need to come up with a good landscape design for your yard. Whether it's a little area like a butterfly garden or an area around a bird bath or your front entrance or the whole landscape, if you follow these steps, you should be able to, with a minimal amount of help, create a great landscape that looks professionally done. Just keep in mind your basic elements: your plot plan, your site analysis, your user needs survey, your activity area design, and the best part, for me at least, the plant selection. When you are selecting your plants, it's important to keep a few things in mind. You can personalize it to suit your own interests or needs, whether you want to create plants that will attract wildlife or a specific color, or use native plants. Whatever it is, you can really make it your own. One important thing to consider is not to use invasive plants in your landscape, and there's a lot of great resources out there that will tell you what plants are good to use and what plants really should be avoided for a good landscape for our Florida environment. In addition, a good thing to think about is your usage and how the plants are going to last throughout the years for your family and people who are going to be using the landscape. So when you're putting all these things together, with a little bit of help, like I said, from a garden center or a friend or even a professional, you should have a landscape that, instead of creating frustration and spending a lot of money, will give you enjoyment and relaxation for years to come.